Iran is often mentioned as one of the most complex hotspots in international affairs, and this is no coincidence. It is a Middle Eastern country with a history stretching back thousands of years, abundant natural resources, and an exceptionally sensitive geopolitical position. Iran is the cradle of great ancient civilizations where traditions of statehood, national consciousness, and pride were formed very early and have deeply shaped modern Iranian society. That long historical depth has created a strong sense of identity and self-respect, but it has also brought with it heavy burdens. Put simply, Iran is a very important country, yet life for its people is far from easy. Geographically, Iran sits at the heart of several global strategic currents. It lies next to the Persian Gulf, a vital maritime route through which a large share of the world's oil supply passes. At the same time, Iran stands at the crossroads of the Middle East, Central Asia, and South Asia, making it a country that major powers can never afford to ignore. As a result, whether it wants to or not, Iran is constantly drawn into geopolitical tensions, strategic rivalries, and confrontations that go far beyond its borders. Tehran, the capital, is the political, economic, and intellectual heart of the country. It is where power is concentrated and where political and social shocks often originate before spreading nationwide. To understand why Iran repeatedly faces instability, however, it is not enough to look only at geography or history. One must also examine its unique political structure. After the Islamic Revolution of 1979, Iran established a distinctive political system that combines elements of a civilian government with the authority of religion. Formally, Iran has institutions familiar to many other countries: a president, a parliament, elections, and a state bureaucracy. In reality, however, ultimate power does not rest entirely with elected officials. At the top of the system stands the supreme leader, the most powerful figure in the country. The supreme leader has decisive influence over the military, security forces, the judiciary, state media, and the overall direction of domestic and foreign policy. The president, while responsible for managing the day-to-day affairs of government, must operate within the framework set by the supreme leader and the religious establishment. This structure creates a particular tension. Citizens do participate in elections and have some voice, but they do not always feel that they truly shape the most important decisions affecting the nation. In times of relative stability, this imbalance may remain in the background. During periods of economic hardship and social stress, however, the feeling of powerlessness becomes far more visible. In short, Iran is a country of immense potential and equally immense pressure. Its strategic location, rich resources, and deep-rooted national traditions could be powerful drivers of development. Yet these advantages are offset by long-standing international sanctions, persistent geopolitical confrontations, and an economy that seems perpetually short of breath. For this reason, whenever Iran experiences unrest, the consequences tend to spread quickly and become far more complex than they initially appear. At first glance, protests in Iran may seem almost routine, to the point that many outside observers are no longer surprised by them. But a closer look reveals that what is happening now is different from previous waves of unrest. The root cause this time is not ideology or abstract political slogans, but something far more immediate and tangible: the economy and everyday survival. Over the past year, Iran's national currency, the rial, has steadily lost value. For economists, this may appear as lines on a chart. For ordinary people, it is felt directly in daily life. Savings accumulated over years suddenly shrink in value. Monthly salaries remain the same, but buy less and less. Every trip to the market brings a new shock as prices rise again and again. Inflation in Iran has surpassed 40%, but the real pain lies in where those increases are felt. Prices have surged for items that people cannot avoid buying: bread, cooking oil, fuel, rent. These are basic necessities. People may cut back on non-essential spending, but they still have to eat, travel, and have a place to live. When the cost of these essentials rises sharply, daily life becomes suffocating. At that point, political rhetoric feels distant and irrelevant. When people are forced to calculate every meal, they have little energy left for grand ideas or ideological slogans. Their immediate concern is simple: how to make it through the month. Those hit hardest by this reality, small shop owners, market vendors, and petty traders, were among the first to take to the streets. These are not people accustomed to political activism. For them, losing even a single day of business means losing income. But when prices rise relentlessly, customers disappear, costs increase, and profits vanish, silence is no longer an option. When trade can no longer support a family, people feel compelled to speak out. The involvement of this group sends a clear message: Iran's economy has exceeded the limits of what ordinary life can endure. People are not protesting because they want chaos, but because they see no other way to protect their livelihoods. This leads to a question often asked from the outside: how can a country so rich with oil struggle like this? Iran possesses roughly 150 to 160 billion barrels of proven oil reserves, placing it among the top oil-rich countries in the world. In addition, it ranks second globally in natural gas reserves. Much of its oil is located in the south, close to the coast, making export by sea theoretically easy. On paper, Iran should be an energy powerhouse. Reality, however, tells a different story. The core reason lies in long-standing international sanctions. These sanctions did not arrive overnight. They tightened gradually over many years, leaving Iran's economy in a constant state of strain. Oil, the country's main source of revenue, cannot be sold freely. Exports must go through intermediaries. Transactions are complicated, prices are lower, and receiving payment is often uncertain. As a result, the state lacks foreign currency, the rial weakens further, and ordinary citizens bear the consequences. Economic ties with the outside world are fraught with obstacles. International money transfers are difficult, payments are complicated, and businesses hesitate to expand. Many companies simply struggle to survive, cutting staff, reducing wages, or postponing plans. Workers live with constant anxiety about losing their jobs or seeing their income shrink. Foreign investment is near inexistent, leading to a shortage of new jobs, especially for young people. Many graduates, despite being well-educated, cannot find stable employment. Perhaps the most exhausting aspect of sanctions is not the initial shock, but their endless duration. Life does not collapse overnight, but it never improves either. People grow accustomed to hardship, yet that familiarity only deepens their exhaustion. They live day to day, uncertain about the future. Eventually, a simple but powerful question emerges: why must ordinary people bear the cost of confrontations they had no role in deciding? When that question is no longer asked quietly, but spoken openly and widely, silence breaks. Protests in this context are not sudden emotional outbursts, but the accumulated result of years of economic pressure. Iran has seen major protests before, over fuel prices in 1919, or nationwide unrest in 2022 following the death of Mahsa Amini. Each time, the underlying problems were never fully resolved, only temporarily suppressed. The situation resembles a spring compressed for too long. It may not snap immediately, but the longer the pressure is applied, the less force is needed for it to burst. As a result, each new wave of protests tends to spread faster and become harder to control than the last. One particularly notable feature of the current protests is how demonstrators act. They do not merely gather briefly or chant slogans before dispersing. They actively occupy spaces associated with state authority, administrative buildings, central squares, symbolic locations that represent the presence of power. In political terms, these spaces matter greatly. Even a temporary absence of state control can damage perceptions of legitimacy. This is why the current unrest has alarmed Iranian authorities more than previous protests. What begins as frustration over daily expenses can, in a society burdened by long-standing pressures, evolve into something far more profound and unsettling. Iran, therefore, remains not only a challenge for its own people, but a complex and enduring question for the wider world.